Welcome back. For today's deep dive, we're going to really challenge a familiar idea, the mind as a computer.
Yeah, that metaphor's been around for decades, hasn't it?
It has.
Yeah.
But the sources we're looking at today, they all center on something called semantic fields theory, or SFT. And they argue that model isn't just, incomplete. It might be fundamentally backwards.
Yeah, exactly. The mission here is to explore this alternative framework, one that tries to account for, well, the sheer complexity of the mind, consciousness, even things that look a bit anomalous.
Right. So what's the big problem with the computer metaphor then? Why move away from it?
Well, its main limit is dealing with things like flexibility, creativity, context, emotion, and crucially, how we actually generate new meaning. Computers follow rules, right? Formal linear operations. SFT is built for the, let's say, messier reality, a living system that's constantly reorganizing itself. So we're diving into how SFT explains meaning, learning, and how the mind interacts with itself and the world around it.
Okay, so if we're throwing out the computer metaphor, what's the core unit? Not neurons, not symbols.
Sure.
What does SFT build around?
It centers on the semantic constellation, or Seikako, and semantic here means much more than just language.
Okay.
A Seikako is like a whole package deal. It's a complex, coherent blob of meaning that links everything related to a concept, sensation, behavior, your body's response, brain activity, your psychological state, all of it.
The total experience package, yeah.
Yeah.
Wrapped around an idea.
Precisely. And here's the real paradigm shift, the reason this theory feels so different. In computing, logic, rules, sequential steps, that's the bedrock, the OS.
Right, a foundation.
SFT completely flips that. It says abstract, rule-bound thinking like math or formal logic, that's actually a high-level skill, something we have to learn, often with a lot of effort. It's hard work for the brain.
Okay, wait. If that kind of logical thinking is difficult and learned, what does that mean about how we naturally think? What's the mind's default setting then?
The default is what SFT calls a low-level connective dynamic. It's spontaneous. It's not running algorithms. It's about linking clusters of meaning that are semantically related just based on the network's structure.
So more like association, analogy, metaphor.
Exactly. Highly generative, very fluid. It's far more adaptive than strict linear computation could ever be. The mind naturally flows, It doesn't naturally calculate.
Okay, let's unpack the structure then. The second links mind and body. How deep does that connection really go? We talk about mind-body communication, but the sources use this phrase, transversal network integration. That sounds intense.
It is. It means the semantic networks don't just send messages to the brain. They actually branch into the neuronal, even subneuronal networks directly in a distributed parallel way.
So meaning from experience literally reshapes the physical connections.
Yeah, modifies the structure, the weights of the pathways. It's not just a temporary chemical signal, it's structural. The body and the meaning-making architecture are woven together, one system.
Wow. Okay. And because of that deep integration, the system's dynamics are described as complex, often operating at the edge of chaos. What does that actually mean for how the mind works or feels? Is that just fancy talk for creativity?
It's very much related to creativity, yes. Edge of chaos means a system has enough order to cohere, to hold itself together,
Right, stability.
but also enough flexibility, that's the chaos part, to adapt, learn, and generate something new. That flexibility is where creativity and unexpected insights come from. Too rigid, you just repeat old patterns. Too chaotic, you lose coherence, you lose your sense of self.
That adaptability brings us back to the CCUS. They act as attractors, you said. So a familiar situation triggers a CCUS and pulls the mind towards reliving similar past states, fitting the new experience into that old pattern.
Correct. That provides stability.
But what if something happens that really challenges that pattern? A big contradictory experience.
That's where you can get a bifurcation. If the new event is significant enough, it can actually modify the seacoast attractor landscape. It can cause the system to, split.
Split.
Yeah, the original meaning cluster can fracture into two sub-seacoasts, and these can be antagonistic, holding conflicting beliefs or driving opposing behaviors about the very same experience.
Okay, that sounds unstable.
Yeah.
How does the mind handle that? Like if you have one seco saying, trust this person,
Yeah.
and another screaming danger, how do you avoid just freezing up?
Well, that instability, that tension is the mechanism for choice. The redundancy, the competition between these conflicting seacoasts, that's what forces a higher level selection process. It gives the mind the space to choose. Without that conflict, you just have automatic reactions.
You can see this play out in memory, right? Especially with trauma. The dog bite example from the sources. A traumatic event forms a core SECO. If it gets stuck, really strongly reinforced, it becomes an insisted trauma.
Like a cyst, yeah. A closed-off rigid SECO. It implicitly shapes behavior for years, sometimes.
How's that different from just, say, psychological repression?
Repression is more like pushing something away, trying not to think about it. An insisted trauma means the SECO is still active, still potent, but it's walled off. It's impervious to new information, positive experiences can't easily modify it. It blocks integration.
So it's running in the background influencing things, but you can't consciously get at it to update it.
Pretty much. It consumes resources and can override other learned behaviors related to that area.
So how does healthy learning or adapting work differently? How do you break that cycle?
Healthy learning involves gradual modification. SFT calls the result fractal memories. Instead of one big, dominant, scary SECO, the initial experience gets duplicated, in a way. It appears in a self-similar form, but on a smaller scale, integrated into the wider network.
Ah, so the memory's still there, but it's not this monolithic thing.
Exactly. Now it's accessible through other related SECOs, maybe context details like a quarrel SECO if there was an argument nearby, or the lake SECO if it happened near water.
So accessing the memory via the like association, instead of directly hitting the dog bite core, might be less overwhelming. It lets you process it bit by bit.
Precisely. It makes the memory addressable through less emotionally charged pathways. It decentralizes the trauma, allowing the system to integrate and heal. Knowledge grows like a web, flexibly.
Okay, that covers the internal dynamics. Let's zoom out. The SECOs is internal, but the mind isn't in a vacuum. The theory talks about ecosemantic fields, or ecofields. This sounds like the bridge to the external world.
It is. The environment, objects, culture, nature, everything isn't just a source of raw data or stimuli. It's seen as a contextual semantic field itself. And we're in constant interaction with it. SFT calls this subject-object synergy.
Synergy. So a two-way street. We shape the world shapes us.
Constantly. The mind injects meaning into the environment.
Yeah.
That's an organizing force. Think about a tree. Is it a sacred spirit, potential firewood, an ecological asset? The meaning we inject determines how we interact with it physically.
Right. And the other way.
The environment retrojects meaning back into our psyche. This feedback loop is critical. It's how the external world reinforces or modifies our internal SECOs.
Let's look at that retrojection. The sources mention this kind of strange example. The lawnmower syndrome,
Yeah.
or someone named Y having car trouble.
Yes.
The theory seems to imply that Y's negative state actually modified the car's ecofield, leading to malfunctions.
Yeah.
Now, is this just Y noticing faults, more a perceptual thing? Or is SFT saying the mind's meaning actually influences the physical object? That sounds radical.
It is radical, and yes, this is where SFT really pushes boundaries. The theory suggests the mind's organizing force can alter the contextual semantic field of the object. In Y's case, his negative expectation, maybe some associated clumsiness, and the resulting breakdown formed a loop.
A self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Sort of, but potentially deeper. The negative SECO injected meaning into the machine's ecofield, making a problem more likely, perhaps, and then the physical problem retrojected confirmation back to Y, strengthening his negative belief. It positions the mind as an active agent in physical reality, and not just watching it.
Okay, if the mind's influence isn't strictly local, cause and effect, we're talking about non-locality. How does SFT handle events that seem to ignore space and time?
It introduces semantic proximity. The idea is that the semantic dimension, the realm of meaning, operates by different rules than classical space-time. What matters isn't physical distance, but closeness in meaning or feeling.
Semantic closeness.
That's the proposed basis for understanding correlations that look anomalous, things that don't fit standard causal chains.
So if two people share a really similar, deeply felt SECO, they're semantically close, even if they're miles apart. This sounds like it could be a mechanism for Jung's idea of synchronicity.
Exactly what the theory suggests. Synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences, are viewed as non-local connective effects. They arise when contextual events happen to be strongly linked, semantically, to a core internal state or event.
Okay, give me an example. How would that work? Let's use the Ted example from the sources. He's wrestling with this dual SECO, breakup versus continuation, about his relationship. He makes a strong, maybe not fully conscious, internal shift towards the breakup SECO.
Yeah.
A strong internal decision. How does that become an external coincidence?
That strong activation generates semantic ripples, let's say. These connect non-consciously with someone he's empathically linked to his friend Dan. Maybe Dan's own semantic lattice is currently sensitive to similar themes. Perhaps he just went through something similar.
Because there's a kind of non-conscious tuning.
A semantic resonance, perhaps. This connection, operating via semantic proximity, not distance, facilitates that chance meeting. Dan says something, shares an anecdote, that lands perfectly and instantly validates Ted's internal shift. The link was meaning, not physics as we usually think of it.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. The mind is an organizing force acting across this semantic dimension.
Okay.
Let's pull back inward again. From the world interaction to the self. If we're this collection of potentially competing seekos, what is this self?
Yeah, the self isn't some simple single thing in this model. It's viewed as an ongoing construction, a constant effort, a striving for coherence and consistency. It's the process of trying to manage and balance all that internal diversity, the multiplicity of seekos.
So less like a central processor and more like a manager trying to get different departments to work together.
That's a good analogy, maybe like a village manager trying to coordinate specialized families, the farmer seeko, the artist seeko, the angry seeko towards some common purpose.
And this multiplicity, this village inside, changes how we think about consciousness too, right? We tend to imagine that stream of consciousness as one single flow.
But SFT suggests that stream is just the specific seeko that the self system is focusing on at that moment. Underneath or alongside that, there are numerous non-conscious parallel thought processes running.
Operating simultaneously.
Yes, grounded in association, analogy, metaphor, and operating much, much faster than our conscious linear thinking.
We see hints of this, don't we? Those stories about incubation periods for problem solving. Poincaré, Kekulé dreaming the benzene ring.
Exactly. Their non-conscious seekos kept chewing on the problem while their conscious attention was elsewhere. The solution popped out when the parallel processing finished.
And what about states like hyperlucidity in a crisis? That account by Albert Heim during a long fall.
Right. He reported experiencing multiple distinct trains of thought all at once, analyzing the fall, remembering his life, planning actions, all running in parallel. It shows the huge processing power available outside that single, focused, conscious spotlight.
Okay, so if we have this vast, fast, parallel non-conscious network running,
Yeah.
where does free will fit in? Are we just sophisticated automatons reacting based on which seeko gets triggered? Or is there room for genuine choice?
The theory argues that free will, genuine choice, emerges directly from this dynamic self-organization and the multiplicity of seekos. Think about David from the sources who reacted violently.
That initial reaction could be seen as reactive behavior,
Yeah.
the non-intentional activation of an old, strong, perhaps rigid authority seco. It was the path of least resistance in that moment.
But he didn't stop there. Later, he reflected. He consciously worked to create a new way of seeing things, a new synergy seco.
Exactly. That act of self-reflection, of intentionally generating a new meaningful concept, a new seco, and then shifting his focus to it, that allowed him to see alternatives, to generate different potential responses. That's a transformation driven by internal intention, not just external triggers.
So the very fact that we have multiple competing seco, different viewpoints, values, potential responses, is what makes choice possible.
Precisely. The plurality, the internal antagonism, is the necessary ground for intelligent choice and selection. If you only had one pathway, one dominant seco for every situation, there'd be no choice, just automatic execution. The tension creates the space for will.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up.
Yeah.
What's the core message for you, the listener, trying to make sense of semantic fields theory? It seems the mind isn't a cold calculator at all. It's this vibrant network of active meaning.
Yeah, concepts aren't just passive labels we stick on things. They are dynamic generative agents. They actively shape our internal reality and, according to SFT, maybe even interact with the external world through these ecofields.
The fundamental takeaway seems to be that generating meaning is what the mind does.
Yeah.
Thinking isn't just processing, it's a creative act.
Absolutely. And concepts aren't fixed. They are constantly being reconstructed by our own thinking, like David creating his synergy seeko. And importantly, those new concepts then actively generate changes back into the network, reshaping our potential, our behavior, maybe even healing old wounds like fractal memories, replacing trauma.
Which leads to a pretty powerful final thought for you to consider. If your current experience of reality is largely shaped by the dominant seekos you hold right now,
Then what new generative concepts, what new ways of meaning making are you ready to consciously cultivate today? What new seekos could you start building that might just transform your entire field, inside and out?